So about a week ago, Wizard of the Coast made an announcement about the future of Dungeons & Dragons, and I remember watching the video thinking to myself that it was a rather tepid affair. Basically, they stated that they would keep the infrastructure of Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition and publish a series of rules tweaks with input from the community through an open beta of the new system. Great stuff, a slight rules update, really all that could be done with the game system at this point. After that, they rolled out the idea of allowing people to redeem physical books for digital copies, another win, and finally the announcement that they would build their own virtual tabletop system 4 years after anybody cared. All in all, nothing major, just a few updates, some system changes, all done over a 2-year period with input from the community. So I stepped away from the announcement with a resounding meh, vowing to keep an eye on the changes as they develop. So naturally, imagine my surprise when a few days later I found the shrieking monkey cage that is the social media discourse losing their collective shit, as if the changes were handed down on stone tablets by the TTRPG gods, and were about to be enforced by the FBI in a matter of days. Now originally I had not planned to make a video about any of this nonsense, talking about the light in development rules tweaks of a game system that won't be published for 2 years is a lot like walking in on the development office and critiquing the dream board. However, now that everybody is losing their minds over these proposed light rule tweaks to a beloved game system, I see it as my duty as a self-proclaimed chaos being, as well as a Canadian citizen, to try and bring the temperature down. So let's talk about what is in D&D 1. So right out the gate, the only piece of content available for review by the community is a single 21-page Unearthed Arcana article detailing some proposed alterations to character creation mechanics. So of course it's easy to see why everyone is so reasonably upset, he intoned with bitter sarcasm. Now this is not to say that these are the only possible changes we know about when it comes to the future launch of D&D 1. However, most of the other stuff is a lot of vague what if and maybe statements that breed speculation. And I'm a dungeon master, not a soothsayer, pondering the future with my orb. So let's take a look at the Unearthed Arcana article. The 21-page document is a bit of a bland affair, covering changes to playable races, backgrounds, and languages. Suspiciously absent is any information about playable classes. I imagine they're shoring up defenses for the next reasonable round of discourse before they drop that bit of information like a live grenade of social media anguish. After a brief introduction detailing how this is all development content and that they're happy to hear the feedback from the player base, a prologue that I assumed was skipped by most of the masses, we delve into playable character races, more specifically the old regulars of human, dragonborn, elf, gnome, halfling, orc, and tiefling, with one newcomer in the Ardling, a name that initially made me imagine a baby deer of some kind, but the assessment turned out to be not too far off, with the Ardleen being a semi-celestial race with spectral wings and animal heads in a very Egyptian mythology style. So prepare yourself, Dungeon Masters, edgy Anubis and Khonshu-inspired OCs are coming. That said, Ardlings are long-lived semi-celestial beings with humanoid features and animal heads representing different celestial legacies. They get some racial abilities depending on their chosen legacy, and a limited use bonus action flight ability that is just screaming for a high ground sniper build of some kind. Oh, and they are resistant to radiant damage, so they have that going for them, which is nice. As for the usual suspects, there's a lot of homogenization in the other races, extra text detailing that no one race is an island, and they all range in diversity and culture from realm to realm and case to case. Incidentally, there's a lot of talk about the multiverse in this particular piece of content, which I feel like will be a bigger thing in the next player's handbook that is put up, whereas previous player's handbooks had focused on specific realms that were kind of the centerpiece of the edition. It seems that the multiverse is the new hotness. A few of the racial histories have been tweaked in some minor ways as well. Many of the racial abilities seem consistent with current rules with a few small changes. So let's go through them one by one. Humans have some interesting new racial traits, gaining inspiration when they take a long rest, as well as a bonus skill proficiency and the skilled feat along with another bonus feat, a bit of a change from being kind of good at a lot of things and knowing one more language. Dragonsborns get much of the standard Dragonborn fare, breath weapon damage, resistance, dark dark vision, draconic automatically. The breath weapon has been standardized into a 15-foot count cone with 1d10 plus character level worth of damage across all damage types. So no more lines. Dwarves get a bit more of the same as well, with dark vision, dwarven resilience, and 2 new traits in dwarven toughness, a bit of a bonus HP, and forge wise, a buff to tool proficiency that I imagine will become clearer as things develop. Stone cunning has been given a bit of a rework. It grants tremor sense now rather than the previous buff to history checks. The dwarven subraces have been given a hand wave with a few lines detailing that dwarves call themselves a lot of things, pick what you want. Elves remain mostly the same as well, with fey ancestry, keen senses, dark vision, and trance all remaining the same. However, subraces have been changed into elven lineages, each with some changes depending on your favored elf flavor. Drows get more dark vision and dancing light, with fairy fire and darkness at higher levels. Incidentally, darkness at level 5? Brrr. I have questions about the spell levels later. Wood elves get prestidigitation and can swap cantrips. They also get detect magic and misty step at higher levels. And then wood elves get more speed, druidcraft with long strider and pass without a trace at higher levels. Gnomes keep dark vision and gnomish cunning. They also receive 2 lineage options in place of subraces, with forest gnomes getting minor illusions and speak with animals, and rock gnomes getting mending and prestidigitation. Halflings have had all their subraces removed and get all the same traits as before, with the bonus of all halflings having naturally stealthy. Now one assumes because it was the only subrace trait that anyone cared about. Orcs are a copy-paste of how they appear in Monsters of the Multiverse, with adrenaline rush, dark vision, powerful build, and relentless endurance, all the same as they were before. And then finally, tieflings are losing hellish rebuke, shocked gasps, and they are gaining an ability called Otherworldly Presence, which basically gives them thaumaturgy. As well, they have a choice of 3 legacy, each of them with different cantrips and resistances, as well as a few extra spells at higher levels. Now, wise and powerful viewer that you are, you may have noticed that none of these races had any ability modifiers in them. Well, that is correct, dear viewer, and you never cease to amaze me with the way that you like videos and subscribe all the time. The reason for this lack of ability scores is that the largest change to character creation has come in backgrounds, and backgrounds now determine ability score modifiers, along with 2 skill proficiencies, a tool proficiency, a language, and a feat. Now, originally when I heard about this change, my first thought was, well, that's silly. Most characters create custom backgrounds for their characters, so the idea of a player having to pick a specific background for their character in order to get specific stats, feats, and other bonuses seems a little restrictive. However, in practice, things are a bit different. Of course, there are custom options, and in reality, you can simply assign 2 ability scores, 2 skills, a tool proficiency, and a feat. From a mechanical standpoint, the background portion of this is largely window dressing. You can say your character's a cobbler from Rhode Island with +2 strength, +1 dexterity, and who's proficient with thieves' tools, animal handling, and survivor. And oh, he has the dual-wield feat as well, and the only one you'll have to answer to is your dungeon master. Taking things from a player's perspective, it does allow for a greater range of character customization outside of the race and class selection. That in mind, the cynical veteran dungeon master inside of me can practically feel the stream of min-maxed and poorly balanced characters that will be headed my way. Beyond the balancing issues, I question this move in terms of accessibility to new players. Certainly, these changes provide an infinite number of combinations of character creation, and in the face of that many options, it's easy to imagine people getting overwhelmed. Many new players have a hard enough time picking from the multitude of race and character and class combinations available. It's not too difficult to imagine new players sliding into a game at their local game store, only to find a party of more experienced players outmatching them at every turn and sidelining them in their own adventure. For all of 5th edition's failings, its greatest success is in its accessibility for new players, and a portion of that comes from first-time player experiences. 5e has a ton of customization options for players at the present time. However, most all players starting the game at level 1 on relatively equal footing. While these changes don't seem to disrupt that too radically, the more experienced a player is, that gap begins to widen substantially. One must always consider the balance between new player experience and veteran customization when making these kinds of changes. In the end, I'm a bit of on the fence when it comes to the change, and in its current form, I definitely see some potential hurdles in it. But time will tell if any of this makes it to the final draft. At the end of the day, these are the only explicit changes we know are intended for D&D 1, and even these are subject to numerous revisions over the course of the development process. So if you disagree with these changes, the best thing you can do is playtest the content for yourself and offer your feedback. And hey, if it doesn't work out, you can always release your own version of 5e 2 years after the release, and then, infuriate your own fan base with your own changes later down the road. I'm looking at you, Pathfinder. And that's it. That's everything that's in D&D 1 for the moment. Take a look at it. Tell me what you think I got wrong. Tell me what you guys think of D&D 1. And stay tuned for more videos. Till next time, puck out.